Oh, I think we're going to hear my cat crying too.
That's real life. So you were saying you think it's going to be easier for us to talk about ourselves than something as esoteric as white supremacy, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, like I know we've shifted the time slot, and I've been running around all day, and now you're wearing a hilarious clown nose or Rudolph nose. I don't know. It's a red nose.
I think it's a red. I gotta go and clown. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't light up. I guess that's Rudolph. So yeah, and it's summer, and I had a couple beers, and usually I'm just dead sober when we talk because it's dead serious action here. That's what it's all about. And so I think my comment was like, yeah, for a lot of reasons, which I think we'll maybe unpack. There's a bit of like, yeah, looking at our journey here and looking at a couple things that have come up. And yeah, I think my reaction was, oh yeah, like I don't really want to think a whole lot today. So it feels way easier to just talk about us and our journey than to like unpack some esoteric or academic concept.
That's interesting. Well, see, this is one of the many interesting things about you and I, where to me, unpacking like a philosophical, semantic, etc. I mean, that's caffeine to me. That's yerba mate. Whereas doing myself is like also enjoyable, but certainly drains much more of my battery innately. But I think not to say that, oh my gosh, so therefore that's how I exist, so you're a liar, but rather than to highlight how I think this is one of the great things about us is we have very contrary sort of like energy flows and drains or whatever, I think, which makes us good complementarian co-hosts on this journey. And today we would have been talking about white supremacy, but instead today we're going to be talking. I don't even know what the question is. What the hell happened? ? Last week we took a dead week, but we had 2 episodes shelved. But now we did these episodes. Andy wisely sort of put the caveat. He's like, these are going to be especially prickly and sensitive. We do third rail topics every week, but this is an especially electrically charged one. This is definitely something we should be like just conscious as to how we proceed. So let's do it. Let's listen to it. Maybe I'll get some feedback, and then see whether we put them up or not. So we recorded 2 episodes. I thought they were great. Although the first one was probably slightly meandering or coning, as we started talking about the way the dogs smell, back and forth, kind of chasing the cone, kind of coning their way towards the center of the sweet lollipop. But then, Andy, you went and got feedback, which ultimately led to us talking about it and pause, at the very least, who knows, maybe shelving those episodes or pausing those episodes until we can sort of reckon through it. So I guess today we're sort of reckoning through that, as well as kind of reckoning through what we're reckoning through.
It's a day of reckoning.
Yeah.
I want to like add a W to that, like reckoning.
Yes, Wreck-It Ralph style.
Yeah, and I don't know that you named it just now, but that topic was abortion.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had said even when we set out on this journey that I imagined that would be like our season finale, or we have no idea when a season might end. It could be 10 episodes or 300. Yeah. And yeah, I think I am processing a lot around that in real time. And this is something I'm willing and maybe wanting to do on this show is, like come to terms with, without unpacking that exact issue, but maybe look at the process of getting feedback. Mm-hmm. and how that has struck me, and some of it I've shared with you. Yeah. And there's things, we can learn. I mean, there's certainly some format notes that I think are valuable for both of us.
Yeah.
And then there's this piece of it for me around boldness. Me being Andy Swindler.
Oh, that's right. And if I say me, I do mean Brendan
there's no I in team, but there is a me.
Absolutely. Coach never liked that.
Yeah. Yeah, I just watched Hoosiers the other day.
Good.
Classic.
Good coach. Terrible person. Good coach kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. So for me, we decided to pause these episodes, and I'm retreading some of the stuff that we spoke about via text or whatever. I immediately, of course, wanted to see, you got the feedback from 3 different people. I went and got feedback from absolutely no one, which I think speaks, people might be like, listening to the show. I'm not surprised about that, Brendan. It's so funny. I've never been that interested until more so recently, but never been super interested in, gosh, this is going to sound so dicky as an actor, but whatever, what the audience thinks. I really don't. It's one of the reasons I've never really cared about theater. I've done a ton, but like I don't really think it's that great of a medium. I was like, it's a little too necessary for the audience to be completely on board. And then even when they're bored, or even when it's their fault, like I think if you've ever seen a Broadway show, there are good audience. When you say good audiences or bad audiences, that doesn't just mean like our set was good or bad. No, some audiences are literally bad. They come in, there's too many distracted people. There's too many people on their phone. There's too many people who can't hear properly, whatever, a whole bus full of people who can't hear because they won't turn their hearing aids on or whatever like that sort of thing, all the way down to just distracted people because life is hard. So interestingly enough, I went and got no feedback. So then my immediate thing was like, oh, okay, I just want to hear your feedback. And thus far, I think this is certainly something I've had to struggle with, is there's a consistency of the feedback. And people, it sounds like, may not be a huge fan of me. So I've had to wrestle with that in terms of like, okay, well, how much is the audience's fault and how much is that my fault? Same time as anytime I'm on stage. You know what I mean? You're like, am I blaming the audience for what I've done poorly, or am I improperly blaming myself for what the audience has done poorly? And that is always that's untangling overcooked spaghetti, you know?
Ooh, image. Yeah, and I'm the objective piece here that could be measured, which I think is often the frame you enjoy, and I appreciate, is airtime.
Yeah.
Just how much time do we spend speaking? And I think we're not going to go back and measure it. If anybody wants to volunteer to do that, we'll accept the data.
Yes.
Send it to anything.
Yeah.
I think anything at totallyclassic.com will go to me.
Nice. And the first person who does it, I will send you a free sticker. It won't necessarily have anything to do with the show, but I'll just send you a cool sticker.
Oh, he does have the coolest stickers. That's actually a really awesome offer.
Yeah, my kids have taken quite a few of them, just so you know, but I still got some awesome ones. They take my really nice one sometimes, where I'm like, yes, I've had it for 7 years. I don't know why I've kept it, but I didn't want you to take it.
This may or may not relate to Brendan's personality on the show.
Yeah.
So Brendan tends to talk more.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Oh, yes. Oh, sorry. That's what you were measuring. That's what you need to measure, folks.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes I realize as I'm going back and listening, I'll say kind of half of what I'm thinking, and I realize that's not the best. So I can work on my expressiveness and talking more. I mean, that's like my lifelong journey is to actually, say something. So I think we're, balanced in that way. I think a couple things happened though. One is people, especially I'm sending it to people who are, they love me and they so they're kind of going to be biased to be like, why are you talking more? One of the things I think is true, we'll need the data to prove this, is that we are more sort of alternating like topics that we're really passionate about or that we've done tons of research about.
Yeah.
And that's exciting. I mean, this whole thing kind of started around some of the pandemic stuff, which is what you were more plugged into, and we've woven in other pieces. And the reality is, I think you've spent something like 30 years thinking deeply about abortion as an ethical quandary of humanity.
Yeah.
Whereas I more have adopted my family unit ideology of being pro-choice. And so, for me, a lot of this is unpacking, like, well, what do I really think, and why do I think that?
Yeah.
And so a lot of those ideologies I still stick with, but it's coming to terms, I guess, coming to age in a way of me deciding that and knowing why I think that.
Yeah. Which one's yours? Yeah.
And so it's interesting. Some of the feedback I got was like, oh, I know you can be a bold stand for the autonomy of women and the choice of women, and I want you to hear that. And I kind of heard in that the goal, maybe people perceive the goal of this show is for me to like debate you, for me to at an absolute minimum sort of like stand toe to toe, like have equal airtime and sort of point for point, whatever. But maybe even like that this would be a medium where one of us is supposed to win. And we've said from the outset that that's really not the intention. The hope is that the expectation actually is that we're going to leave a lot of these shows not having like radically shifted each other's perspective at that macro level, like the big huge binary of like of the third rail, but hopefully on maybe a lot more of the microscopic pieces, the micro binaries, and again just knowing on any of these topics either of us or maybe have put less thought and research into, that we come out of it with a deeper understanding of why we even think that thing or why we even believe that thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, to me, that is just one of the great joys of human existence. And one of the reasons humans are sometimes regarded as, depends on your circle, as regarded as quote unquote higher life forms. The reason we can think and plan. And so it's so fun to do that. It's so fun to exercise our speciesist privilege in thinking. So then it's like, in general, like I always find it delightful when I discover I've been thinking something and I don't know why I'm thinking it, because then I'm like, it just, to me, it's like finding an extra room in my house where I was like, look at all the thinking I get to do now to figure out why I know this. Well, and I was so excited in the abortion episode, especially because I was like, yes, I've been literally arguing this for 30 something years, and then with a whole mess of people. And then if you hadn't, I was like, well, that's great. But that also speaks to a worldview thing that I probably haven't talked about on here, but I've been arguing about it to some degree with Archie, my wife. And she is a firm believer in the years that go into craft and expertise and those things being of preeminent, almost exclusive value in terms of where you would turn to evaluate something. And I don't. Like, I am a firm believer in pursuing craft, elevating craft, executing craft, practicing all that sort of stuff. But I also think there are people out there who can walk in the room, give them 10 minutes, and they can whoop your ass in whatever you're doing without any of the experience you have, any of the skill. They're going to make some mistakes that you would be able to avoid, but there are people out there who will step in, never having done it, who will rookie and be able to see things you've never seen. And I think if you have any acumen whatsoever, it's almost guaranteed that a brand new newbie, someone is going to teach a 40-year expert who has humility. So for me, I was excited because I was like, especially in the first abortion episode, which I think is what at least one person I listened to some of that. The whole first episode was pretty much like, let's go through all the false arguments. And I was like, I had my reasons as to why I was dismissing them. But basically what I did is I brought up, this is why I was talking a lot. One of many reasons. So I brought up like 8, 9, 10, 11 different things. And I was like, okay, here's the popular thing that people say, but here's my reasoning as to why that's actually not fundamental at all. So we can get rid of that. So let's only talk about the real stuff. And we eventually got to the real stuff. And so I thought, especially since you hadn't reasoned through things, I was like, in the same way, when you do your episode on white supremacy, I have very little like knowledge base about it, but I think that makes me a super valuable person, because I can come at it as a relative naive and then just be like, well, all right, then all I'm listening to is literally what you're saying. I'm not coming and being like, oh, this means something about you or thing, but I'm just like, oh, okay, that makes sense, or that doesn't make sense, or what question, or just because as long as we have the ability to reason, which we all do, then I was like, it can become a pure reason exercise. Whereas for me, it's difficult for abortion to be a pure reason exercise because it's something that's so entangled with like a literal lifetime of advocacy or experience or loss or tragedy. You know what I mean? All that sort of stuff. So anyway, I'm a big believer. I that is something, I know something we sort of talked about before recording this episode. We could talk about like what we're trying to get up to. That definitely speaks to something that I am trying to get up to on this, which is like to reason together and also to kind of share space back and forth as to being the somewhat the sort of thought leader into like, what are we exploring? The adventurer, the person with the torch, the Indiana Jones, and at other times being short round, where I'm just going to be behind you and just asking naive questions and making jokes. You know what I mean? Because that's, I think shifting back and forth between those modes, kind of being a leader and a follower, is helpful for me in both of those capacities, you know, I think, and hopefully helpful for just any human being.
Now I'm stuck on is short round racist, because I've entered a phase in my life where I'm evaluating everything I've ever grown up with, every piece of media.
Yeah.
I thought about starting a men's group that was, or a branch of a men's group where we would just watch like some of those hyper masculine movies, like anything with Harrison Ford, pretty much.
Yeah.
And just any James Bond movie.
Oh,
not just going in with the bias of like, oh, this is horrible, but like, how did this impact us? How did this affect?
Yeah. And how do we ignore it? And then like, I mean, I think so many of those things. I think, again, I think nuance is malarkey, but I think there's a bunch of binaries, miniature binaries to be gleaned. And I think we as a culture, I think that's a great thing to go in and let's re-examine everything in our own heads, in our own culture, because I think we have a tendency to just to go macro, to pretend the macro is the binary, and then just like chuck things out. You know what I mean? Problematic, canceled, can't watch that anymore. Song of the South, not on Disney Plus, as opposed to being like, well, you could read flipping whatever, the Communist Manifesto, communism. More people have died under communist regimes than any other ideology on the planet, right? But you could read the Communist Manifesto and still glean things from it that are true and helpful and good and wonderful. You know, just like you can even Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. You know, maybe not the best. Maybe it wasn't the best one. There's something good in there. And you know what? People talk like short round in the real world. Like even if they were doing it as a racial stereotype, you still will meet people who are racial stereotypes in the world. So then as an artist, you're stuck in this weird thing. You're like, well, do I just pretend that people don't do that because it sounds bad? Because it certainly sounded bad. I mean,
it wasn't the worst one though.
No. Oh gosh, no. Nuke the fridge.
Did that? I can't remember. Did the fourth one come out? Did we see that together?
I don't think we saw it together. I saw it way late. Like I saw it, I don't know when it made it to streaming or whatever, like when it was free somewhere.
Okay, we may be like down in the hole, like nobody has any fucking clue what we're talking about. So we're talking about Indiana Jones 4.
Yes.
Something about the crystal skull.
Yes. So worse than being racist is just being bad. Somewhat racist but proficient. Okay. I mean, other than that, if we got rid of things that were racist and efficient, we might throw out like an enormous amount of the Western canon and art. You know, I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
most of it.
Most of it. Yeah. I mean, this is why again, I won't even stop listening to R. Kelly, guys. That's where I'm at. Terrible person. Think he should be in jail. Kind of a cult leader. But I still play I Believe I Can Fly for my kids, and we all sing it. So.
And now I'm wondering about the old woman who spoke jive in Airplane.
Yep.
I mean, I thought it was hilarious.
I still think it's hilarious. I think literally most people find it hilarious. I think people who spoke jive probably thought it was hilarious that someone was trying to speak jive. It's hilarious to me that anyone even that was even a remote consideration, that there was literally a dialect referred to as jive.
Because while it might be
I barely believe it.
a bit, because while it might be a bit racist, it's actually anti-ageist.
Yeah, anti-ageist. Yeah. Well, and anti-racist because it's unconcerned with the racial implications of that someone by virtue of their skin color should or shouldn't be speaking a particular way. So in that way, it's literally trying to dismantle any concept whatsoever of race. So whoever thought airplane was woke? No one, including the Zucker brothers. But see, and this is the thing. Okay, so people, let's go back to the thing. So so I talk, and this is obviously evidenced by this episode as well. I talk a ton more than Andy does. But that was another thing about the show that I was like, I'm not that worried about, because that's how we also communicate. I mean, I don't have my phone on me right now, but if I pulled out our text thread or whatever, I mean, it's pretty much the same. That's the thing too, because at first, okay, so we got feedback that basically I just like was dominating the time in one of the feedback things. And I was like, I don't disagree with that. And I probably can leave more room to some degree. But at the same time, that's how I think it's up to everyone to process to their maximum. And so I process verbally to my maximally. And so let me give my 100%, and then you can give your 100%. And I think in general, I've always thought myself as I'm hyperverbal and I'll say 400 words. And then you'll often say 40 words. And as I've often been told that the less you say, the more impactful what you're saying is. So then I don't have to worry about heft at all, because by virtue of me saying so many things, that to most people, it sounds like devalues the very words I'm saying. Now, I don't agree with that, but that's what I hear a lot. So then I was like, then word count, would that even be, we would then have to, what you'd actually have to measure is not word count on the air, but electromagnetic impact of said words on audiences, or you'd have to be able to measure internal words versus external words. So then it's what percentage of the words in your head are you speaking? I don't know where I'm at. I don't even know how to measure that. But anyway, I was going to pull my phone out, but I've been mostly releasing these as audio. But in our text threads, for example, I'm in blue on mine, and it's let's not front. It's an F load of blue. I mean, there'll be blue, 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 blue. Oh, it's not showing up right now, which is super weird. But it's bluey blue, 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 blue. That's all me. There's you. There's you, me, you, me, you. So this is also how we process, not in me shutting you down. We have equal opportunity to I mean, you're in the airport for 12 hours. And so we were talking back and forth about many different things, including a super weird picture of your mom smelling something. I'll just leave that one right there for the internet. No, but we process differently. And I guess we always have. So I think for me, I was all right, well, Andy will talk when he's talking, and I'll try not to interrupt, but I'll just talk until it's time for someone else to speak.
Yeah, and it's I mean, one thing I don't want, the whole idea of seeking feedback is intriguing.
Yeah.
I think we're both people who always want to improve and try to gather data, and
yeah,
in some ways I think you're probably better at receiving that than I am. I mean, I know I can take things personally, as much as I try not to. And one thing that's come up, there's the volume, which what I don't want to happen is that I allow feedback to really start sculpting how I show up here, because the whole intention was for me to show up and be authentic, be true. And it's interesting, that choice of the word bold, because I think some people were advocating for me to be a bold stance for a specific ideology.
Oh, interesting. Sure.
And my reaction, and I'm working through this, is well, I'm here to be a bold stance for this kind of dialogue.
Yeah.
Where the goal is not to overpower you or win, but the goal is for us to reveal these pieces to each other
Yeah.
And we do them publicly because maybe others would benefit from that, whatever side of anything they're on that they
Yeah.
look at.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I'm kind of working through. And so part of that is like not wanting to like artificially increase my volume quantity or volume loudness.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be an argument to affect that, I guess, the way I show up and the way I put it out, but that's not my intention. And it's interesting how that comes across.
Yeah.
And because I enjoy hearing you, and clearly some don't, as you mentioned a minute ago. Some of it's just some of the feedback has nothing to do with what you're actually saying or standing for. It's just like, well, I don't like him. I'm like, okay.
I know. Well, that's the hardest thing where I'm just like, well, do you hate something that's essentially me, or do you hate something that I'm doing? In which case, as an actor, I mean, like me receiving, I think that's one reason why it's somewhat easier for me though, Andy, too, is like my life has been trying to present a version of myself, then getting feedback and changing myself based on that. Now, if I'm not being paid, I'm much less inclined to alter myself, you know what I mean, based on that feedback. But me hearing feedback or being like, I mean, it's not weird as an actor to be like, I don't know, that take was terrible, so let's just do that again. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it'd be nice to have more specific notes. But so then when I get feedback of like, in that case, the one that I read or whatever was like, basically that she didn't say obnoxious. She had a better word than that. Anyway, but like that obnoxious and dangerous and not pontificating. She used a better word. I don't mean to use worse words, but basically just like I'm awful. And which I was like, well, I don't know what to do with that. I mean, to some degree, I want people who disagree with me to think I'm awful and to think I'm wonderful. And I want people who agree with me to think I'm awful and think I'm wonderful. Because then I feel like I'm probably in a good safe zone of like trying to reason things together, And you said something really interesting. I was like, I never thought about this. Something I think about this. This is like the question you phrased of like, what is this show? Like another thing that I think this show is like putting a puzzle piece together. And everyone puts puzzles together differently. And whether I put in like a bunch of edges, like let's say I put 15 edges down and you put down 3 pieces in the flipping middle, then it's just like, well, you're not pulling your weight. You only did 3 pieces. It's like, well, you did 3 middle pieces. Those are harder. You know what I mean? And those are obscure things. And so I often feel I'm like I assume, and this is where I want to like talk about abortion with you. I was like, here's how me finishing the puzzle, but you're going to be like, that piece is upside down. You know what I mean? And even if it's my driver and you point out one thing that I can flip and go, oh, that's good. I was like, I know your mind and I know your mind works very differently than mine. So there's almost no way that my reasoning won't become more accurate in conversation with you. Whether or not, again, we like change each other's minds or think fundamentally different. I was like, I know we're going to do the puzzle differently. And I'm not really worried about like who did which piece or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was also raised by a few different folks, and not even just about that episode, but was, I guess the perception is if I talk less, people have used this phrase like I'm giving you a platform. And I'm just really confused by that. Now I understand if it's one where you have focused on it more. I think we each go naturally into like a little bit of interview style. We ask each other questions throughout, but I think maybe that's what they're responding to is if I'm asking more questions, because then that seems to frame it traditionally like, you're the one here, you're the thought leader or whatever, being interviewed, like sharing information.
Oh, so interesting.
I'm guessing a little there. But a few folks I really respect have mentioned that.
Yeah.
So it's worth unpacking a little bit, but part of it again just seems to go back to like, if they don't agree with your ideology, they seem more likely to say that. Like,
I don't know. It's hard. I'm glad you said that because honestly, this is the trap that I've been shoved into many times, where it's like I don't If I say, I think your criticism is invalid largely because you just don't agree with me, and so you're calling me these things, that immediately seems defensive. You know what I mean? And so that makes me look like I'm not processing. Now, I shouldn't care about how things appear, and largely I don't, but I'm open enough and aware enough to like also kind of see where things land. So, but that was my enormous part of my struggle when people, and again, if someone uses words like dangerous, that me talking about like rational, especially that first episode, talking about reasoning, how do we reason through these arguments about abortion? Then if that, I don't understand in what world that could be dangerous, or in what world that's giving a platform. And that's a word, that's just a phrase I've seen thrown around a lot. And I'm like, I would never be concerned about quote unquote giving a platform to someone's thoughts. You know what I mean? Like, as long as it's an open forum where those thoughts can be challenged, you know, and you and reason through. And I think the funny thing is, I actually think interrogation is the power move. Like the person, it's like Joe Rogan has an interview podcast, right? It's called the Flipping Joe Rogan Show. He has the power as the question asker. And I find this when I reason with people online, the people who constantly ask questions, I feel it's almost, what is it? It's activating my body. It gets me like, oh, we're trying to fight then? Is that what's going on? Because to me, I'm the one who's asking questions here, is it puts that person in the role of the interrogator, which gives the person who's asking questions power. And I find asking questions, especially in the middle of trying to reason something through, I find it kind of aggressive. Now, I realize not everyone feels that way. So I always try to like breathe through it and be like, maybe that's not how they mean it. Sometimes it certainly is. But yeah, so that's fascinating to me. The idea of, and again, this is why I like doing this with you, because you think almost very differently or opposite, you know. But I think that's interesting. So even I asked a question or two on here, and it put me. Maybe I should put the video up so people could see me. I'm a confident speaker most of the time. You can hear by my extensive strings of soliloquy. But when I had to ask a question, there was like a pause, and I was like, okay, what's the question? I have to ask a question. I close my eyes, my shoulders go back, my head kind of tilts here, and I go, okay, you know what I mean? Because that's weird for me to shift into, like, it feels bossy. So it's funny when people are like, you're so domineering. And I was like, oh man, it's kind of the opposite thing that I want to be. So the feedback hits me in that way. And I was like, ugh, like, why do I keep being received in that fashion? And we talked about this on the show too, the people not understand that like sharing one's rationality is enormously intellectually, it's an intellectual vulnerability. But I don't know if people have the language for it the same way we do about like emotional vulnerability. I think because we're such a therapy steeped culture now. So we have those systems anyway, but I just find that fascinating that you have a almost like an opposite relationship with the power dynamic of asking questions. But I wonder, are you in spaces here? This is me asking a question. I'm just like, I'm gonna seize it. It feels weird to me, but I'm gonna do it. Literally makes my hips, like I really feel like right under my where my belly hangs is kind of pushes in on my hips, kind of makes my intestines feel bad when I push into the power dynamic of like, are you in spaces where people ask, like, interrogate things or discuss things by asking a lot of questions?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I wish they asked them more though. That's fascinating. Like I think that's like I guess there's different energy around questions in different environments. I mean, a lot of the basic premise of Circle is having a prompt, is like passing the talking piece around the circle based on all of it's like answering the same question. So there's including the space holder, including the circle keeper. Yeah. So I guess maybe the geometry there is a little different.
That lowers my tension immediately. If it's a fair and equitable thing. I think a lot of times when I'm engaging with arguments with folks, it tends to be like, you can tell the dynamic is shifting from collaborators in reason. When someone starts asking a lot of questions or whatever, it tends to be a shift into like, I'm judging this competition as well. You know what I mean? I'm arguing and I'm also the debate judge all of a sudden, in which case you're like, well, now it feels like a debate instead of like we're trying to reason through something, and I'm like,
it turns it. I love questions because I think it helps me to be, have a prompt or be coaxed out or be invited in, because it's harder for me to inject myself. And I dated somebody who was ADHD, and it was like she was, and I've had a few other friends, on the spectrum and whatnot, like who are like, they beg me to interrupt them. They're just like, I'm not going to stop. Like and I won't be offended if you interrupt me. And so it's been a huge learning for me, just even the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years around that. And like, cause it is so hard for me to interrupt people for whatever reason, like probably a lot of reasons. So I think that's just an important quality of like getting to know people. And I sense maybe you're a bit like that. I think there's been a couple times I've interjected, and I think you're like happy to just let that be the new fork in the road.
Oh yeah. Well, especially in this format, most particularly, if we recorded like a real conversation of ours, these conversations that last, like, let's say this one's going to last an hour, it would probably be stretched over a 3-hour period. You know what I mean? In natural conversation with Andy Swindler, there are periods of silence. Or at least that's what I've become familiar with. And then then we sit in silence for a while and just breathe or inhale and exhale or whatever, you know what I mean? Or whatever. So then,
AKA breathing.
Yeah, AKA breathing. Sure, breathing. So then that, I think me just knowing that makes it so on here, this is an audio flipping recording. So silence is way weirder. And it often, an audio recording, any extended silence feels discombobulating as a listener. When you watch something and there's a long thing, if it lasts anything longer than like a second and a half, you pick up your phone, you look at it, and you've stepped, it throws you out of the flow. But that's how I listen. Maybe other people don't. Again, this is the fascinating thing about the world. If I hear dead air, I start to go, wait, is this, did the Wi-Fi disconnect? Right. And then I'm not in that room with those people anymore,
So what we need, the answer to that is more reliable technology, because we're still in this awkward phase where it's like, my headset died or the battery's out or the Wi-Fi, and it's like,
exactly. My AirPods,
it all just works like 99.9% of the time.
It does. That's
intentional sound. Actually, I told you I was reading my sister-in-law, Katie Swindler's book, shameless plug here, Life and Death Design, on, I believe, Rosenfeld Press. And she mentions, she's talking about really breaking down the stress response and, oh gosh, this is actually a movie concept. I'm forgetting what it's called. But it's like, obviously, like crafting a movie has a lot to do with manipulating emotions.
Yes.
Which is funny. I was just re-listening to our thing about when we were talking about like, can you make somebody feel like that? Make anybody feel anything? And I was like, I don't know. Like I'm maybe adjusting some of my opinions about that. But Katie was talking about, I guess one of the original ideas for Monty Python's Flying Circus. I don't know if this was John Cleese or somebody else, but this idea to like keep lowering the volume, and then people would have to like stand up, and this was in an age, kids, you'd have to stand up and like turn up the volume on your damn television, and then sit down, and then they'd like lower the volume again, and they'd get up, and then after 5 minutes their volume is turned all the way up, and you just like blast them. And it didn't get approved, so that didn't make the, I think the BBC was like, no, we can't do that.
That's you're literally assaulting, you're orally assaulting people.
But one thing you had mentioned, I think on text, and I'd like you to share this and maybe unpack it a bit, is something about, there was kind of this divide or this binary with the feedback you're getting from folks. And I don't know if that's just you generally out on social media or this podcast or both. But it was something about women who know you and women who don't know you. And can you share?
The interesting thing is, because I think 2 of the 3 people you had spoken to were women. And I actually was recently, I've started making lists over the past week or so. I started making a list of all the concerts I've ever been to, because I haven't been to a show in a while, and I was starting to feel like sad about it. And I was like, I've been to a lot of shows in my life. Let me just well, who have I seen? Started making a list, and then I just started making a list 2 days ago of people who I know in real life who have unfollowed me on social media. It's dominantly women. Now, I think Instagram might be dominantly women anyway, or it seems like the people who do the most heavy amount of interacting on Instagram are women, and or the people who I interact with on Instagram are women. Now, I know when I say that most of the women who are in my people who are in my DMs are women, I know that could come across salty or salacious. It is not. I think one bot and then one real person has it ever moved into that territory. And as I can swear right now because my kids are away, I shut that shit down. I don't play that game. That's pretty much the only people I unfollow on Instagram, by the way, in terms of how people, maybe this is informative for people, how people use social media. I only unfollow people. I think I've unfollowed 3 people maybe in the entire history of Instagram of when I've been on there. And I unfollowed them because their content kind of turned more sexual than it was previously. And for me, like lust, kind of controlling my lust and not objectifying women is something that I think is already hard enough in life. So I really don't need, I can't, it's not helpful for me to function. I don't need that test. You know what I mean? That's something I'm already kind of like, I fail that test a lot of looking at things I don't need to be looking at, or having lustful ideation when I don't need to be having it. So anyway, all that to say, these women interactions are actually really just lovely and about thinking differently, and women who think differently than me or think similar than me, or so all of my feedback online has been the positive feedback about our podcast, more generally than episode specific, has been from women. I think maybe one dude, but anyway, let's say 5 or 6 women have reached out and had like really positive things to say, or reshared my episode share or something like that. So it's very interesting to me that I seem to either provoke a very strong rejection response or a very strong acceptance response, where people feel the way they're expressing it kind of like taken care of by me to some degree. They're like, oh, thank you for doing this. Thank you for saying, not even just me, but both of us, you and me. It's like, oh my goodness, thank you for doing that. Because there is this weird, I think there's a gendered tension about it. There's a misogyny, misandry like element in women responding to men and men responding to women. And so I think I think there may be even a divide, this is pure conjecture, of what people think men are for in the world. In that some women think men are supposed to be strident leaders. They are supposed to be protective. They're supposed to like be leaders in some way. And I think our podcast is a leadership podcast ultimately, in that I think we are trying, I saw a wound in the culture, and I saw that you and I don't live as though that wound exists. And so I was like, cool, let's lead. Let's show people how you can do this, and completely disagree and actually walk away disagreeing, and then be like, hey, let's talk about this then. Talk about it again next week. Sure. See you then. You know what I mean? And it doesn't have to lead to rancor, and it's not about platforming. Like when you're talking about things that I don't agree with, I'm not like, oh gosh, I'm platforming because I'm sharing this stuff, with a bunch of my Christian friends, and I'm really platforming Andy's, agnostic or maybe even new age ideas. It's like, what are you talking about? We live in the world, man. We talk to people.
I might be full on pagan. I don't even know.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I'm platforming a pagan. Preposterous. Anyway, so that to me was
forming a preposterous pagan.
Preposterous pagan. Please, Eddie. So yeah, I don't know. That was an interesting thing to me. I was like, oh wow, this is like, and as a man, of course, being rejected or accepted by women in both cases, non-sexual, non-romantic, but it still has a strange tie-in with that, where I was like, well, yeah, this to me, I'm also not that worried about it because this tracks. I was like, this is how most of my life has been. I'm a bit of a love, like once I spend genuine time with you, or even sometimes very quickly, I've noticed with strangers who will engage, who are like, hey, I'm a friendly stranger. Would you like to talk? And I'm like, heck yes, I would. And I will completely talk about what you want to talk. And some people are like, oh, I wasn't ready. I was looking for a small talk. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm happy to be, and I think it's a good place to be where people either love you or hate you. I think if you live in the middle, everyone's like, oh, he's all right. Like, oh no, you're not. I don't think you're living. I don't think you're living, dude.
Yeah, it's I hang out with a lot of, you know, consciousness folks, maybe post New Age, non-dualist, however you want to say it. And
So many words.
It's lots of words. And I'm all about the oneness. I'm all about everything's energy. We're all connected. You know, I may have a heightened ability to even perceive some of that.
Yeah.
And I feel like, well, however we got here, why, like we're here to be in duality. We're here to have contrast, to have shape and form and difference. And because otherwise, we would just dissolve into the oneness. And like, like a lot of people believe like there's like a line of souls trying to get into Earth. Like there's a fucking wait list because this is such a special place in the universe where we get to experience this tension, this aliveness, this reality.
We've got a problem. We've got a problem on the border. Okay.
We're going to build a hitchhiker level kind of wall. We're going to need a bulldozer that big.
Yeah.
So something else that I was intrigued by was, so I think we both accept that there's some format notes. You know, we've been a bit fast and loose here. I mean, you've done more organizing than I have, whether it's the actual production and publishing or like the fact checking on Tumblr. You know, and I think just maybe that was laziness or just where I am in life. I was like, I just kind of want to show up and do this thing, and like we'll see where it goes. Yeah. And it's possible that it is funny, right? Like you were saying about acting, like starting to consider the audience as more part of the equation here. I mean, I've heard many people say, and I agree with this, like a great podcast is just a good conversation. So I think that's been the premise.
Yeah.
And yet, okay, for some of these where we do have, I mean, most of these we are really trying to get at a topic and try to get at a question, often a paradoxical, perhaps unanswerable question, really.
Yeah.
And even within that, there may be value to having an outline, having some sense of how we get to where we go. That's consistent, or at least a little more efficient. And one of the things I was curious about it was, without like redoing all of our intro stuff, because we have an entire episode that's introducing us, maybe more than one. One of the pieces I got was when we just drop right into that, especially that abortion episode when it was presented. You know, I think generally I agree with your idea of like, well, let's at least parse all of these different arguments, and let's at least then decide which ones are more beneficial, which ones are going to have more bearing, which ones maybe even seem to have some kind of conclusion we could get to. And your efficiency to get there maybe was read as a kind of dismissiveness, like oh yeah. And maybe it is, because you've like spent many years reasoning and actually literally dismissing these things.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's something I'm noodling on, is like, well, but for such an emotionally charged topic, how do we approach it with the care and love and respect that I know we both have for life in the world? Because without that, I wouldn't be here. And I don't know that you would either here talking about any of these things, because otherwise, who the hell cares? Why does it matter?
Why talk about it? Yeah. Well, interesting. Yeah. Well, again, but this may speak to us too, that I'm like I would have people pull the Band-Aid off me fast, and I would pull the Band-Aid off fast. I don't like doing it, but I feel like it doesn't matter whether I like it. It doesn't matter how I feel about it. I think it's the best way. You know what I mean? So I think certainly, and I am not as naturally empathic as you. I don't really care that much about the pain. I'll do the thing to make the person feel like I care, so then they feel cared for. But if my job is to rip the Band-Aid off, then I can't care about your pain, because it's going to make it harder for me to do my job. It's like a flipping doctor, right? And when I'm doing surgery, I can't be emotionally involved in the flipping surgery. That's why family members don't really do many surgeries on their families. You know what I mean? You have someone else do it. You're like, oh, this is my mom. I can't do this. I have to be, if I'm doing surgery. So that, to me, when I was going, especially in the abortion episode, if we're going to be going through arguments that we need to excise, and I'm literally saying these are cancerous, like we need to cut these out. So no, like it's not. And you're like, oh, but that's my body you're cutting open. You're like, well, what does that have to do with anything? Like you can have an emotional response about your tumor all you want. But if it's a tumor, and that's what I was like, is this a tumor? Is what I was bringing up piece after piece. Like, is this a tumor? And if it's a tumor, we just got to cut it. So to me, it's like, it literally was like treating us like consulting doctors. Are these arguments tumorous? Are they cancerous? Are they harmful? Because having an argument that's not real about something you're arguing about is toxic, awful. I mean, it's good to do it in order to figure out it's not real, but if you keep doing it over and over again, which certainly happens with abortion, and I think because of that same premise of like, there's this sensitivity thing that has some part to do with it, but some of it doesn't. Because it's weird. It's like you don't dance around or kind of like, now listen, obviously as a doctor, I know my first, after I do my residency, my note from my supervising surgeon would be, you got to work on your bedside manner.
Yeah.
But that's how I would get rid of tumors. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, I don't care whether you like your tumor, like I'm getting rid of it.
And by the way, when I was in Austin, I picked up some bravery badges.
Cute.
Unicorn bravery badges.
Congratulations.
Otherwise known as Band-Aids, but you can't call them Band-Aids.
Oh,
that points to the wound. But the bravery badge points to like the fact that I was brave enough to take care of my wound.
Oh yeah. Or brave enough to earn the wound, brave enough to ask for help or take care of yourself. Clean up your own mess. But but I think that's a difficult space. I think we both have different handlings with, because again, I don't care that much if people get upset, as long as I'm saying something true. If I'm saying something that's like, I don't know is true and I've upset someone, then I shift out of ration mode into emotion mode. You know what I mean? But I'm more of a shift. I'm more of like I feel like I leapfrog from compartment to compartment as a thinker, potentially. I don't know. I'm just analyzing my own thought process. Who knows how accurate that would ever be, but.
Well, yeah. And there's a dance between like wanting to be like reasonably digestible and entertaining and effective, and also not like over strategizing. Like, where's that line? Not giving up the way into full on, I don't know, national newsroom where we're like every damn element is strategized, is considered, is researched, is weighed, is weighed, sent through legal.
Sent through legal.
We don't even have legal.
We don't. Focus grouped to death. We don't want that. I don't want that. But again, I tend towards rationalism. So for me, I wouldn't. And with abortion, I'm kind of like, since and this is the thing too, I was like, the sensitivity around abortion is, and I'm already going to irritate people right now. Like it's overhyped. It is way overrated, because ultimately we know, and this is what we're talking about in our show. If we're all being honest with each other, we're talking about two human lives here. And so this is like life and death stuff. So then is life and death conversations, is that the time to be like, well, really you want to speak about it in a certain way, or, blah, blah, blah. And like, no, like if someone's on death row or whatever, and this, again, I grew up watching movies and I live my life kind of as though movies are real. So this also speaks to who I am, that like, no, you go and you stridently tell the governor to his face, get on the damn phone and make the fucking call. You know what I mean? You don't go, well, you've got to, listen, you have to know the governor has a lot on his plate, and this man did, murder some of his associates, so he is a murderer. We don't want to take him off death row. And you're like, what? No, we're talking about life and death here. This isn't time to go like, well, people might feel certain ways about it, and you have to understand how guilty the governor's felt every other time he's had to preside and allow an execution to happen. Like, that's life and death stuff on his conscience. But to me, I'm like, I don't want to even audition for the character who is concerned about that. I'm like, no, we have to have these conversations. Like, this is life and death stuff. And at the time we had the conversation, I was like, the conversation was everywhere until it's about 2 weeks, y'all. I've noticed it's about 2 weeks, and there's a brand new number one most important thing that everyone needs to be talking about. I just started paying attention to the news the past 2 years, and oh my gosh, what a roller coaster.
And it was I want to. I'm going to be slightly careful how I say this because I don't want it to sound dismissive. It was, I believe, the school shooting. And the thing that gets me about that is that there's a mass shooting basically every day in this country.
Yeah. Yeah. Depending how you categorize it. Absolutely.
And so yes, it's tragic. Yes, I think I could be on board that it's more tragic because it's children. And I think, to your point, like, what is this staccato news cycle, attention cycle, where, oh, okay, we cared about that. You know.
Now it's this. Now it's this. Well, I'm going to go ahead and throw this out to the world, and people listen to me if you'd like. I'm pretty sure my strongest thesis most recently especially as like abortion, gun control, January 6 hearings, all three of those like very dominant news items that were kind of like weaponized for everyone to talk about and then hyped up on Twitter and then blah, blah, blah. They're all designed to accentuate political partisan bickering. Accentuating political partisan bickering enhances the likelihood that people will feel energized enough to go out and vote. We were just in a like primary election cycle, heading into midterms or whatever they're called. So I was like, this is specifically weaponized. And all three of them are very easily weaponized by legacy media, press, or news organizations to vilify Republicans. Because right now, I don't know if people are paying attention to polling, but the Democrats have lost, like, I think it's over the past year, it's like 17% Democratic supporter, 13 to 17% slipped. It's the largest like loss of confidence in the Democratic Party in, I think, 50 years or 48 years, or like, an enormous, like my entire lifetime.
Wow.
So paying attention to that, I was like, oh, all of these allow Republicans to be vilified in a way that kind of like activates Democrat leaning people to be like, yes, that's why we have to get them. Because what we learned we've known our whole entire lives, but we especially learned in the Trump years and for media, because Trump was such a boom for media, is that he was a great villain. And so he led to like huge numbers and huge revenues and a huge swell for the Democratic Party, running pretty much on we're not Trump, right? Like Biden won the presidency pretty much by not being Trump. He barely campaigned. He's a terrible candidate. He's an awful president. No Democrats were excited really about Biden. Like, he's not exciting. He wasn't the best in the primaries. He was meandering. He's old. He's done like our country's in shambles or whatever, all that sort of stuff. But like, he won because he wasn't that flipping awful guy. You know what I mean? And he got more votes than Obama, y'all. Biden got more votes than Obama. That's nuts. Because Obama, whether you liked him or not, that's not front. That was a great candidate. That dude was charismatic as heck. Tall, athletic, like had a good vocal tone, smart. His wife was smart. You know what I mean?
Lots of pauses.
He really, I know, but he's got like a high Q score. You know what I mean? And he's distinctive. You can even like, he's mockable in a way that's just like anyway, the dude is a great candidate. Let's not front. But all of that to say, I think that's part of what especially lately, I feel like all of a sudden for 2 years, it was like COVID, right? And then maybe riots and then blah, 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 BLM riots or blah, a bunch of things would kind of pop up, but it was pretty heavily COVID. Meanwhile, all these terrible things are still happening every single day. Then all of a sudden, paying attention to COVID was done because it just kind of like it had lost its political impact for everybody, but especially I think for the Democratic Party. So then, since the Democratic Party like left biased media is the dominant form of news media, and that's not me. I'm not a Republican. That's just a fact. So again, I think that's why they weaponize it, is to provoke division, hatred, to where, for example, you can live in a world where someone's spouting something that is the opposite of your tribe is seen as dangerous or platforming something like malevolent, or evil. So to me, it's all about enhancing tribalism in order to drive votes and make politicians more money and then make corporations more money. I mean, it's Noam Chomsky's, warnings about the evils of society kind of stuff. But again, I think these are all opportunities because I'm a hopeful nerd. I see these things come up and rile people up, and I'm like, oh, great. Because we can come and reason together, and we realize once we apply reason, we can actually untangle a lot of the tension parts. Because you're like, oh, that's not even real. The things I'm saying, oh, that's not a true thing that I was saying. I just said it because I heard it, or whatever. Like every one for me it's a firefight, but it's an opportunity to like jump into the firefight and start pulling masks off and be like, oh my gosh, look, it's your brother and sister. It's not the enemy. Like you.
There's a whole Black Mirror like that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly. It's the bug. I mean, that was an othering episode, right? So like,
Right.
we're not others. We're not others. Democratic, Republican. That's not a real thing.
So you're about reason. I'm about embodiment.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I've often thought two things I've done very little of in my life: dance and acting.
Yeah.
Both seem to be arguably like the most embodied art forms.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, performance art in general, because it's just totally, it has to be done then. You can't be like, you know what, I'm going to just, unless that's the performance.
Unless that's the performance art. Yeah, yeah.
You just take a break. Dance just being like, I don't know, arguably the purest form, because it's just your body moving, right? But I've often thought this about acting, and I wonder if this is true for you, like maybe even more so with improv, needing to be on your toes. Because I mean, I imagine if you've done a play like 600 times, you might be able to call it in.
Sure.
But I just imagine actors have to be really there. I mean, to step into another character with your body. I mean, do you find that to be true?
Oh, absolutely. And funnily enough, that's not, I think, naturally how I would do it, but that is how God has sent me to learn acting. So like my professor at Northwestern, David Downs, wrote a book called The Actor's Eye, and it's all about observing physical reality on other human beings and using that as the means to create a character. So it's not about internal motivation. It's like, no, what does your character move like? What do their shoulders stoop like? How do they tilt their head when they're listening? Where do they look when they're talking? Blah, blah. You know what I mean? And you just form that, and then go and do the scene, and then you can do all your back work and all the other stuff. You can write a whole backstory, but it's literally body. It's sort of outside in. It's body led. And then when I learned improv, same thing. It was that like our professors, whatever the improv school I learned improv, they would be delighted if you did a scene and never spoke. It was all silent comedy. It's all physical based. There was no suggestions. It wasn't about one-upping each other. It's literally about moving physically in a space together until something arrives, because it always will. So it's hilarious that, my training has actually been in some ways opposite my natural tendencies, which I think is good. I mean, that's in some ways it kind of like helps me. I don't know. I like making things harder on myself because I think it's better for my brain and it's better for my balance. If I just went and did things that like I liked or that were like right in my zone or in my vibe, I feel like all I'm doing is ultimately not all I'm doing, but at least half of what I'm doing is feeding my own desire, as opposed to trying to achieve an end and being like, what's the best way to get there? Is the way that I want to go there, or is it the best way? You know what I mean? Those are separate. That's like saying like, what's the best movie or what's your favorite movie? Those are not the same things,
Well, I'm noticing we're at time, and I'd like to think that we are on the best path.
Let's hope so. Well, if we're on the best path, then we have nothing to change about what we're doing.
Perhaps that is true. I appreciated the opportunity for this navel gazing episode. We'll get back to topical questions next time. This was valuable for me to unpack a few things here, and maybe for those whether or not you're recording a podcast at home, maybe just some things to noodle on about how we interact with our friends and neighbors and country folks, and maybe we can do it better.
And if you have any feedback, giving us feedback on our feedback episode, we're obviously primed to receive it or reject it utterly.
Yeah, where's that suggestion box that goes into oblivion?
Yeah, it's right on the stove.
Oh yeah, we should have one. What do we want to be like? You're the greatest at totallyclassic.com. Or
So at least there's one nice comment in it, built into the actual name. Yeah.
Everything else from there is just total shitstorm.
They do not like us.
They're like, really? I have to type this email address?
Yeah.
Now I have to make that. That's like in recording.
I know you said it. You said it. Got to do it.
Right.
Well, I love you, and we'll either do better or do different next week.
Indeed. Love you too. Take care.
Mwah.
Bye.